everybody. Welcome back to episode 18 of Demons Forever. We are getting so close to the end now. We just have 19, 20, 21, 22, 4 episodes remaining after today. And today is a doozy. I'm so excited because so much is going to be revealed in this episode about how the order works and the truth about Priestess Winter. And I'm so excited for it. I cannot wait to introduce this to you. So I have, as you know, I have been recording these kind of back to back throughout the day today. So for you watching this now, that was a couple of weeks ago. So probably you'll see a change of outfit and I will get the last 3 episodes recorded next, like tomorrow. And then our final episode 22 will be live again because I really want it to be that live experience. Plus it will be in the middle of our Spooktacular celebration. And I want to do some giveaways and have some fun, like finale kind of feel to that one. I've got several things kind of going on in my head right now because I'm trying to decide this quarter, Q4, will be a lot of decision making about what we're going to do next year because I feel like I really enjoy the readings, but I don't want to go on and read books 7, 8, 9, and 10 because there are 4 points of view in those books and I don't really want to do that because I think that would be a little bit more stressful. And I know that you guys will get so much out of them if you just read those books straight for yourself, but I do hope that you will continue on with those books. I will have links for you for all of those books, and maybe we'll do some giveaways for book 7 once we get to the finale of this one. But I'm kind of thinking ahead to 2022 and whether we're going to continue on with readings. Definitely let me know if you guys want to see The Witch's Door when I finally do get around to writing that, which won't be early next year. It's probably going to be after Eternal Sorrows. If you guys want to see that go live, because I feel like it would be fun to do The Witch's Door, which is book 2 of The Witch's Key, in the same way that we did the original book, except that I want to write it ahead of time. I've mentioned that kind of before. But I've also considered doing it in a podcast format where I could pre-record things. I'm not 100% sure, but if you guys like the live streams more than the premieres, let me know your thoughts. Maybe we'll do some kind of like round table discussion before this is all over, either on Discord or in a like Google form or something like that, so I can get your feedback because I want to make sure that whatever I choose, it works for both of us, both me and for the community. But yeah, I've got a lot of things thinking through about how we're going to do stuff in 2022. And I'm curious to know too, if you already are thinking ahead toward 2022 plans, even though it's only October. I am, if you've ever heard of the Strengths Finder, this is something from Gallup that they do. It's often a test that you take when you're in business and it tells you all your strengths. And there is a very wise, she's an author. She's also a strengths success coach. Her name is Becca Syme. And I know many of you who are authors are familiar with her work. She talks about strengths and how it plays into your writing and your plan and all of those things. So there are 34 different strengths. And when you take the test, you get them labeled out like what is your number 1 strength and then your second strength and so on all the way through 34. And my number 1 strength is called futuristic. And because of that, I am always looking out to the future and always thinking about what's coming next. And is it the right path? And is it the best way to serve my community and my audience? So if you're wondering like, gosh, it's only October, why is she already thinking about January and what's going on next year? It's because that is kind of how I am built and how I am made. And I'm just curious if any of you have already started thinking about what your plans are going to be for next year. And whether you want to keep seeing these live streams. I know that several of you, I see a lot of people mention on Fridays that it's like the part of the week that you're looking forward to the most. And I feel the same way. So I would love to keep the coffee chats going. But I just need to make decisions about whether and how I want to present the writing, especially once I get around to writing The Witch's Key or The Witch's Door. We will talk about this more during the Spooktacular a little bit because I have lots of things going on in my head right now in terms of what I want to do with all of those different series and everything else that's wrapping up, because I'm going to be finishing 2 major series. Obviously, the Shadow Demon Saga, I'm working currently on book 12. That will be the end of the Shadow Demon Saga. There may be some side story things that end up happening later in my life that I might go back to, like a Venom series, or I have a couple of spin-off ideas that I might go back to, but I think I am going to let it rest. This will be the ending for a little while. And then I'm also going to be finishing the Eternal Sorrows series, which for me, Eternal Sorrows, I actually wrote that first book, and it used to be called Pandemic. That book I wrote before I ever wrote or even thought of the Beautiful Demons book. So these are both stories and series I have been working on for more than a decade of my life, and I'll be finishing them both back to back. But what I'm excited about is at that point, then I have nothing left that's on my plate, so to speak, like that has already been like started as a series other than The Witch's Key. But I also have a psychological thriller I want to write. I have like Summer of Ghost Story stuff that might come up next summer. I don't know. There's just so many exciting things, and it's like in my head right now to start thinking of how all that comes together. So there's also some talk about writing an actual epic fantasy story that plays in with tarot. I don't know, y'all. It's so hard to hold your ideas back. But I'm feeling creative juices flow while we're in this house. I am just like loving living on the water, and there's something magical about it. So much fun. Thank you guys for joining me and for listening to me chat. We're going to go ahead and dive right in. So we have episode 18, and this is 9 pages long. So I probably shouldn't have talked so much at the beginning because this one's going to be a little bit longer. But basically, Leah was there, and they were talking about Andros's plan and everything. They've got to get, rush to get this ritual performed if they have any hope of saving Airden before Andros follows through with his threat to close and kill all these gates. And as Leah is like, okay, fine, I'm just going to go to my room and rest for a little bit, she sees that Sarra has been working on some kind of family tree. And in it, she starts to see some strange patterns. So you guys heard all about that last time. But she also started to notice that the dates that the new Priestess Winter took over each time coincided with the death of a major city in like a gate town. And so they're trying to figure out exactly what happened. And when they see this anomaly of Clement, Tennessee, Harper remembers that when she talked to her father in the Shadow World, he was saying that his dad, Harper and Angela's grandfather, died in Clement, Tennessee, the year that Harper was born. And so they're like, what happened? Why would he have been there? He couldn't have been the prima demon. So who was he going there to save? And what was the deal? And basically Harper looks to Leah and is like, there's only one way to find out. And we all know what that means because of Leah's ability to show her the past. So let's see what happens next. Chapter 69. What happened that day? Leah shook her head. No. I want to see it for myself, I said. This could be the key to understanding how all of this fits together. Why my grandfather died, why Priestess Winter usually dies after she kills a large demon gate town. We need to know the answers to these questions before it's too late. Jackson shook his head. I don't know if that's such a great idea right now, he said. It takes an extreme amount of power to recreate an event that took place so many years ago. Don't you remember what happened last time Leah showed you a memory? The Order found us and took you away from me. What if they tracked her magic before and that's how they found you? They knew I was with Leah that time, I said. This time they probably don't even know she's come back to the human world. Besides, it's worth the risk. Something happened that day to throw off the pattern. We need to see what it is. I agree with Harper, Angela said. We need to know what happened in Clement that was so different, and what did our grandfather have to do with it? I think it's worth a look. Jackson stood and paced behind my chair. It's too dangerous, he said. We can explore the truth of what happened there after we free Airden. I don't think it will make any difference in whether our ritual works or not. In order to perform this ritual, we're going to have to reactivate the blue portals. Priestess Winter is going to feel it, I said, standing. She'll come for us. If we don't figure out what her weaknesses are, it won't matter if the ritual works to free Airden, because we'll all be dead. We've survived this long, Jackson said. Freeing Airden won't change that. I shook my head. Don't you see? Freeing Airden will change everything, I said. You think Priestess Winter has been coming after me with everything she's got? She sent an insane tiger, a few undead hunters, and her daughter. Not once has she actually come after me herself. Not once have I had to fight her. So far, she's been going easy on me compared to what she's capable of. My father said she's abnormally powerful, more so than any regular prima or witch. We can't win against her without some help. Jackson ran a hand through his hair. His jawline tensed. I don't like this. Can you do it? I asked, turning to Leah. Yes, she said. I've recreated memories of places and events from much farther back than this, but Jackson's right. It will take way too much power. I would be drained for days, maybe a week. We don't have that kind of time. Courtney, I said, turning to Marianne. She's at Lark's right now, but she would be able to recharge Leah's power. Can you go get her? You should be safe once you get past the Chin's security system. Marianne nodded. Should I bring everyone or just Courtney? Bring Lark and her mom too if they're willing to come, I said. I'd been dying to see Lark ever since we got back to Peachville. We could use their help too. Marianne and Essex ran off to get 3 more wristbands from inside. Will we all be able to go see the vision? I asked Leah. She shook her head. It's easier if it's just you and me, she said. It would take too much energy to bring everyone. I looked at Angela. Are you okay with that? I asked. It's your family as much as it is mine. Angela stood. I'm not sure I want to see what happened that day, she said. To watch my own grandfather be murdered is a memory I don't really want, to be honest with you. Her words weighed heavy on my heart. I hadn't even considered the emotional impact of watching his death. I was too focused on getting the information to even think about how it might affect me. Would I be able to handle this? I swallowed down any doubt and turned back to Leah. Then it's just you and me, I said. Please do this for me. We need to see what happened that day. She looked to Jackson and their eyes locked. My heart beat faster as a silent conversation passed between them. Finally, Jackson slowly nodded, then lowered his head. Leah turned to face me. All right, she said. You owe me one. Chapter 70. I came to set her free. Leah and I stood together in the center of the village. My heart beat double time in my chest. She placed her hands on my shoulders. Are you ready? She asked. I pressed my lips together firmly and nodded, trying to control the roller coaster in my stomach. She spoke in her demon tongue, and chills rippled down my arms. We turned to black smoke disappearing from the Crow Village and landing in a large room. Dim lights buzzed overhead. I brought my palm to my forehead and squeezed my eyes shut. Even after all my practice shifting into demon form, I wasn't prepared for the violence of Leah's time travel. I felt as if I'd been slammed against the ground. The demon gate is in here? I asked, finally able to open my eyes and look around. We were in some kind of basement from the looks of it. The floor was gray cement with dirty boot prints and water stains. A set of metal stairs led up, but Leah pointed in the opposite direction. Yes, she said, and motioned for me to follow. In the bigger Demon Gate cities, there aren't large open fields or deep woods anywhere, like in Peachville or Aldine. The Order needs to hide their portals away from the rest of the world, so in cities like this, or DC or New York, the gates are deep in the basement and bottom levels of buildings. Sometimes they're in houses, like in Winterhaven, and sometimes the portal is in the basement of a normal-looking office building, like this one. I thought you said Clement was a small town. It's more like a wealthy suburb of Nashville, she said. Lots of attorneys' offices and banks and such. You've been here before? I asked. I've been to them all, she said. My eyes widened. Them all? As in all of the demon gates that were closed? No, them all as in all the demon gates in the world. I swallowed. She'd been to every gate, but there were thousands. I guess I hadn't really given much thought to what Leah had been doing for the past 50 years. She'd originally come through to the human world to find Jackson, but when his power had been entombed in the statue in Peachville, she'd moved on to look for other ways to fight against the Order. I knew she and the other shadow demons in her group had spent a lot of time visiting Demon Gate towns and trying to convince the witches of the Order that what they were doing to the demons was wrong. I just hadn't realized how extensive her travels had really been. "It's just down this hallway," she said. "Can you hear them?" I listened, at first hearing only the sound of our footsteps. Then, in the distance, the hum of words spoken in unison. My skin began to tingle. "I hear it. We're close." Leah lengthened her stride, and I jogged to keep up. The humming grew louder. "This is it," Leah said. She met my eyes in the semi-darkness, then opened a door labeled "Employees Only." Light flickered across the walls inside. No one looked up as we entered, and I had to remind myself that, to them, we didn't exist. We were ghosts, eavesdropping on the past. The portal stone in the center of a 5-pointed star glowed a deep ruby red. The witches of the Order all wore black robes, similar to ones I'd seen in Peachville. The Prima stood at the top of the star, hood drawn. I recognized her by the ruby necklace around her neck. It was identical to mine, except for the color of the stone. She chanted, and the stone glowed brighter. Screams echoed in the hallway, and I turned, fear closing my throat and making it harder to breathe. A girl, naked except for the red cloth draped around her middle, was carried into the room, her body trembling, her eyes wide as saucers. Her initiation ceremony. It was so similar to the ceremony I'd watched in Peachville the day Brooke had been initiated. The fear in this girl's eyes was the same too, and I knew instantly no one had prepared her for this night. I wanted to close my eyes, but I forced them open. A figure in a blue robe stepped out of the shadows to examine the girl. She lowered her hood, and I gasped. Her white blonde hair, her pale blue eyes. This wasn't the Priestess Winter I knew, but then it wouldn't be. She had only taken power 8 years ago. "Zara's grandmother?" I asked in a whisper, forgetting no one could hear or see us. "Margaret Winter," Leah said. "A cold bitch if there ever was one." This older Priestess Winter stepped toward the naked girl, her pale eyes gleaming. She lifted one pale, wrinkled hand to the girl's face, caressed it, and gripped her chin tight. Their eyes locked for a moment, then the young girl began to cry silent tears. Priestess Winter released her and waved her hand toward the red glow of the portal. My stomach twisted. This woman took joy in the fear of others. She hadn't touched the girl to offer any words of comfort or welcome. She'd merely gone over there to see her terror up close. I shuddered and turned away. "I have a feeling you'll want to see this," Leah said. I took a calming breath, then returned my eyes to the ritual. "Do you know what happens?" I asked. "No, but I have a good guess," she said with a sinister smile. Her smile confused me. Was she enjoying this? She couldn't be. The 5 witches on the pentagram knelt down at the points and began to chant. The initiate's body went rigid, hovering over the portal as the swirling mist of red over the portal stone began to glow brighter. My pulse quickened, waiting for the arrival of her demon. The Prima raised her hands high into the air, opening her mouth to speak the demon's name, but before she uttered a word, a bright light flashed like lightning across the portal. Witches all around the room gasped and backed away. "What's happening?" I asked. "Just watch," Leah said. I trained my eyes on the red portal stone. Another flash of bright light, then a slow burn. White smoke rose up as if the portal itself were on fire. The Prima threw her hood off and backed away from the stone, fear in her eyes. Priestess Winter grabbed the Prima's arm and shoved her back into the spot on the pentagram. "Finish the ritual," she growled. The Prima shook her head. "Something's different." she said. Don't you feel it? I said, finish the ritual. Priestess Winter slapped the prima across the face. Bind the demon now. Calixto, demon of the shadow world, we bind you. Her voice trembled. Enter into this holy vessel, we command you. The red mist below the initiate's body seemed to bubble up. With a loud crack, a rush of white smoke poured forth. Only instead of entering the girl's body, the demon wrapped itself around the neck of one of the witches forming the pentagram. She grabbed her neck, but her fingers went through the smoke as if it were only air. In seconds, she fell to the ground, a bloody mark around her throat. Another strand of white flew from the portal, then another. The room erupted in screams and cries as more and more demons materialized. Witches tried to run, but a white demon blocked the doorway, slicing witches from top to bottom with a silver sword. In the chaos, I didn't know where to turn my eyes. Blood rained down as more than 15 demons sliced through the first row of witches. I covered my mouth. I felt ill. I wanted it to stop. Then suddenly, it did. Demons froze, mid-motion, trapped between smoke and beast. Priestess Winter stepped to the middle of the room, blood coating the bottom of her robe. She held up a tight fist, her face gnarled in anger. The witches of the coven slowly backed away from the frozen demons, terror in their eyes. Don't fear them, Priestess Winter said. Bind them. A few brave witches stepped forward, binding the demons with their magic. Some of the demons became trapped in boxes of ice, while others became bound with fiery rope. Each of them was brought to their knees, their demon form forced to become human and powerless. All were bound, except one, a tall, powerful form hovering over the portal stone, the first to come through, a silver sword in his hand, its hilt decorated with jewels. I gasped. I'd held that sword in my own hands. Priestess Winter walked to the front of the pentagram, her eyes trained on him. Keeping her right fist clenched tight, she reached out with her other hand, putting it straight through the heart of the smoky form. He crumpled to the floor, forced to become human. I instantly recognized his silver eyes. They were just like his son's. King Ryan, Priestess Winter said, I should have known you would show your face here eventually. Did you think you could save her after all these years? The king struggled to stand, but the priestess pushed him back down with only a flick of her wrist. Iron shackles appeared out of nowhere, rising to clasp his arms and pull him farther toward the ground. No, he said, struggling against his chains. I came to set her free. The priestess cackled, throwing her head back. The sound filled my body with terror. Free? She will never be free, she said. The king lifted his chin in defiance. Death is freedom. Priestess Winter held her hand out to the shivering prima at her side. The woman pulled a silver dagger from her robe and placed it in Priestess Winter's hand, a red stone sparkling in the light. You alone will find such freedom today. You're wrong about that, the king said. You will join me. He pulled his arms tight to his chest, then raised them up with a terrible force, the chains shattering like glass. He lifted and shifted into white smoke, moving so fast my eyes couldn't follow. Then, with a cry that shook the walls, he reformed behind the priestess and plunged his sword deep into her back. Its tip pushed through her gut and came out the other side. I gripped Leah's arm. Had he killed her? Priestess Winter dropped to her knees, her hands grasping for the sword as if trying to pull it from her body. Her face began to change and wrinkle, aging rapidly as blood the color of burgundy poured from her wound. The king lifted his boot to her back, using it as leverage as he pulled the sword from her body. He raised it again, this time aiming for her heart. Chapter 71, Feast of Souls. I wrapped my arms tight around my body, breathless. I watched as the king's sword moved toward the witch's heart, my own cheering him on, forgetting for a moment the reason we were here. Priestess Winter dodged his sword before my mind could comprehend what had happened. The king stumbled forward, then attempted to shift. Her spell caught him midway between man and demon. His body turned to stone. Only his eyes were still human, a stormy silver darkening to a deeper gray as he watched the priestess. Her face wrinkled and changed as she stepped toward the town's prima. The woman bowed her head, her lip trembling. Priestess Winter put a bloodied finger under the prima's chin and lifted it up, meeting the woman's tear-filled eyes. "Your family has been loyal to the order," she said, coughing. "This line has been filled with powerful leaders who never wavered in their faithfulness, and I hate to end your reign so abruptly." The prima's head pulled back slightly, her eyes searching the face of the aging priestess. "I don't understand," she said, her tone uncertain. "I need power to heal," Priestess Winter said. She placed her wrinkled hand on the prima's cheek, stroking it slowly. "Such a shame." She began to chant in Latin, words I had heard before, in Aldine. How would this ritual heal her? I didn't understand. With one quick motion, Priestess Winter raised her ritual dagger to the prima's throat. The blade sliced clean across her skin. Priestess Winter held out one hand, and a silver cup flew across the room toward her. She lifted it to the prima's neck, catching the blood inside. I turned away, covering my eyes with my hand. Leah gripped my shoulders and turned me back toward the scene. "I know it's difficult, but this is the part you came to see." I stifled a cry, my fist pressed hard against my mouth. Priestess Winter stumbled, nearly dropping the chalice as the prima fell to her knees. Blood trickled over the side. Summoning her strength, the priestess made her way to the eye of the red portal, then poured the contents of the cup across the large stone. It bubbled and hissed. All at once, the witches of the Clement Covet fell to the ground, their faces locked in a death gaze. With a loud crack, the portal stone broke into a million pieces. "Stop," I said, falling to my knees. "I can't take any more." "Wait," Leah said. She crouched down beside me and placed a hand on my arm. "What's she doing?" I expected the priestess to go straight to my grandfather, but she didn't. Instead, she fell to her knees on top of the ritual stone. Slowly, she lifted her hands upward in a V, chanting again in a foreign tongue. I shook my head. Did this happen in Aldine? "I don't know," Leah said. "We didn't stay long enough to find out." I waited with breathless anticipation as a mist began to form over the body of each fallen witch. "Oh my God," I said, my flesh erupting in goosebumps. "I've seen this before." The white mists hovered over each dead body, taking on a light of its own, just like when Coach King had passed on. The mist over the prima's fallen body was so bright I had to shield my eyes. "I have too," Leah said, her voice trembling. "But never here in the human world. Usually, when a witch dies, there's no sign of the demon's spirit. I don't understand it." I waited for the mist to fill with shimmering color like Coach King's spirit had done, but it didn't happen. "Why aren't they passing on?" I asked. Dread pulled in my stomach. Priestess Winter stood, her face unrecognizable now. She stretched her arms out wide and leaned forward as she released all the air from her body. With a terrible gasping sound, she let her head fall backward, sucking in a loud breath as her jaw practically came unhinged. The white spirit of each demon lifted up, then moved through the air toward the priestess. One by one, they were sucked into her open mouth. She consumed them all, her wrinkled body becoming younger with each demon that entered her. The trickle of rust-colored blood at her side stopped as her wound healed over. Her hands lost their wrinkles and her face became smooth and young. Finally, only the prima's demon spirit remained, a single bright mist in a room full of death. Priestess Winter walked over toward the statue that held my grandfather captive. Tears flowed from his eyes, wetting the stone beneath. "Your queen will never be free," she said. "Her fallen spirit will fuel my withered heart for an eternity to come." Priestess Winter inhaled again, pulling the bright spirit into the dark cavern of her mouth. Finished with her feast of souls, her jaw snapped shut. Then she licked her lips and smiled. Chapter 72. I've seen something like it before. We returned to the Crow Village in an instant. Leah fell to the ground, gasping for air. Courtney ran to her side, but I didn't even look around to see who else had arrived since we'd been gone. "What did you do?" I shouted, my body feverish. "We have to go back. He was still alive." "I can't," Leah said. She coughed, her shoulders shaking violently. Angela ran inside the blue house nearby and came back with a blanket. She threw it over Leah's shoulders, then looked up at me, worry in her eyes. "What happened? Did you see our grandfather?" I paced, my steps quick and frantic. I drew a shaky hand through my hair. Images of death burned in my mind. Jackson took my hand, but I pulled it away. I didn't want to be comforted. I wanted to make sense of what I'd seen. I wanted to go back there and see the rest of it. "We saw him," I said. "We saw..." My voice gave out. I struggled to breathe. What had Priestess Winter done back there? What exactly did we see? "You're scaring me," Jackson said. "Tell me what happened." "Harper." I looked up to see who had spoken. It was a voice I hadn't heard in months. Lark stepped forward, her eyebrows drawn together in concern. Seeing her face brought down my walls, and I threw my arms around her, holding her tight. She hugged back. "I missed you," she said. "I was so worried about you after my mother told me what the order tried to do to you. Thank God you're okay." "I don't feel okay right now," I said. I pulled away and collapsed into a nearby chair. I leaned over on the large table and put my head in my hands. I don't even know where to start. Jackson, Lark, Angela, Sarra, and Marianne all sat down at the table with me. Courtney and Leah sat on the ground near us, meditating together to restore Leah's power. Essex stood behind Marianne, his hand on her shoulder. All eyes were on me, waiting. "It was horrifying," I said, my voice catching. I cleared my throat. "The ritual started as a regular initiation, some helpless girl. But once it started, we could tell something was wrong. Priestess Winter was there, but not the one we know now. Her mother." I looked to Sarra. "Your grandmother," I said. She pressed her lips together, then looked down at the table, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "Instead of just one demon coming through the portal, there were more than a dozen," I said, reliving it in my head. "They slaughtered as many as they could before Priestess Winter stopped them. She was so strong, she made them powerless with just a flick of her wrist." I tried to catch my breath. My heart was still beating 100 miles an hour. "My grandfather led the demons through. I think they planned on killing everyone," I said. "Why?" Angela asked. "Why would he do something like that?" I rubbed my forehead, then met my sister's gaze. "Because our grandmother was a slave there," I said. "She was the prima demon of that town. He said he'd come to set her free, to release her spirit by killing her and the woman she was trapped inside." Angela gasped and lifted the back of her hand to her mouth. "I had no idea." "I don't think he was expecting Priestess Winter to be there," I said. "Either that or he'd completely underestimated her power. She was too strong for the small group he'd brought with him. He tried to fight back, and for a minute I thought he'd killed her. It was the strangest thing. He was able to surprise her. He stabbed her straight through the stomach, and she was bleeding really badly, but..." How did I explain what happened next? I replayed the scene in my memory. When he wounded her, something weird happened to her. She began to age really fast. Her skin shriveled up and her face changed. I said. I thought she was going to die right there, but then she got free, and before she could defend herself, she turned my grandfather. Before he could defend himself, she turned my grandfather into stone. She killed him? Marianne asked. I shook my head. No, she just trapped him there so he could watch. Tears filled my eyes. Priestess Winter said something about needing to heal her body. Then she slit the prima's throat, performing the same ritual we saw her perform in Aldine when she killed that whole town. Every witch in the room fell dead right there in front of us. Why would she do that? Essex asked. Why would she be killing her own people? She needed them, I said. She needed what was inside of them, the demons. Jackson's mouth opened in surprise. What are you saying? The demons didn't die when the witches died? They died, I said, searching for the words to explain what I'd seen. But it was as if the death of the prima and the breaking of the portal stone freed their souls. It's hard to explain. Their spirits rose up from their bodies as mist. I saw it when Coach King died. It was exactly the same, as if they were preparing to pass into the afterworld. Oh my God, Jackson said. He brought a hand to his forehead. The broken portal set their spirits free. I think so, I said. But they didn't shimmer and disappear like Coach King's spirit. They just hovered there for a moment until... My voice cracked and I had to take a deep breath to compose myself. Until what? Angela asked. I glanced up at Sarra. I knew this would be difficult for her to hear. She might have hated her grandmother, but this was still her family I was talking about. She swallowed and straightened her shoulders as if readying herself for the news. Until Priestess Winter inhaled them, I said finally. She sucked them in as if she was drinking them. They healed her, Marianne said, her eyes wide and her expression blank. I nodded. How did you know that? I've seen something like it before, she said. She glanced toward the altar at the center of the village. I've seen the Mother Crow eat the souls of the dead, but I never understood what it was. I never realized they were demon spirits. Everyone around the table grew silent and still. I only saw it once, she said. When I was a little girl, she brought a witch up here and slit her throat like you were saying, only she didn't exactly inhale the spirit. She used a stone. What kind of stone? Essex asked. A soul stone, I guess, Marianne said. I can't remember exactly. It may have been red, though, instead of black. She pulled the spirit into the stone, and then she ate it. Then what happened? I asked, sitting on the edge of my seat. Marianne stared ahead as if seeing the ritual play itself out before her. She became younger, she said. Not exactly beautiful or anything, but somehow less grotesque and stronger. I lay my head in my hands. The similarities were obvious. Both Priestess Winter and the Crow Witch had somehow eaten the demon spirits to give them power and strength. But the Crow Witch was how old? I asked. Over 100 years old, right? Yes, Marianne said. About 120. And she was in rough shape, I said, remembering the old woman's leathery skin and clawed hands. Priestess Winter was still young and beautiful. She was only, 50 back in 1995? 51? She didn't even look that old at first. I don't understand why she aged so fast when she was wounded. It doesn't make any sense. It makes sense to me, Leah said, standing to join us. Her strength had returned completely thanks to Courtney's abilities. How? I asked. Because she wasn't just 50 years old, Leah said. She was 200. Dun, dun, dun. So if you're still sitting here going, wait, how's that possible? I don't get it. How is she 200? You can kind of put some of those pieces together, but even more will be revealed in the next episode, episode 19, as we move into the final 2 weeks of this reading. I hope that you enjoyed that. Leah is the first to really put it together, but we see Priestess Winter basically, as soon as she gets stabbed, she begins to age and wrinkle. And as soon as she inhales these spirits, she gets younger again, which tells you that she's potentially doing the same thing as what the Crow Witch has been doing all these years, that has elongated her life. So this is a big moment. And if you're still trying to wrap your head around it, just wait until Monday's episode, because it is going to become a lot more clear. But if you remember back to when Sarra was talking about how when her grandmother died, or when her grandmother died and her mother took over as Priestess Winter, she acted differently. So you can kind of put that in your head, and I won't put it all together for you because it'll all come together a little bit more click into place on Wednesday or on Monday's episode. So I hope that you're here for that, and I hope you really enjoy it. All right. So I talked a little bit too much at the beginning, and we're running a little bit late, and I actually have to get off of this recording so that I can go to the live premiere that you guys are going to be watching of episode 15 back in the past. So we're kind of doing our own bit of time travel here. I will say though that there is one moment here in this that doesn't play out exactly like you think later. I've mentioned this before, that there are always moments, at least for me, and I've noticed it in other series too, even traditionally published long series, that I think sometimes there's things you put in that are just little things, and then they don't really come to play into the story the way you thought, or you need for them not to be true so that you can tell the rest of the story the way it was meant to be. And there's a brief moment here where Leah says, I've been to all the portal gates in the entire world. And later in the story, that can't possibly be true. So it's just a matter of, I don't know if I want to go back. It's kind of an error in my own writing, because I thought that that would be the case with Leah. But later when I was writing, I was like, there need to be some portals that they don't know about, some portals that they haven't been to, that they're not sure where they're located. So either I can say that Leah is just grandstanding for Harper and she hasn't actually been to them all. She's just been to a lot of them. Or Leah thinks that she's been to them all and there are more than she thought, or it's just an error on my part. But you will notice, if you have read the rest of the books, that it does not hold true later in the books that Leah has actually been to all of the portals in the world, because she hasn't. So that was, one of those kind of moments where things don't 100% line up. But other than that, I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. I am looking forward to the last few with you all, and I will see you guys coming up soon in episode, what was that? That was episode 18. So I will see you guys in episode 19 coming up soon. And I am very, very much looking forward to it, because like I said, all of that extra stuff is about to snap into place for you. So I hope you enjoy it. And if you just can't wait, you got to know how this all comes together and whether they defeat Priestess Winter or not, then you got to go buy the book. So Demons Forever is available pretty much everywhere books are sold. So go grab it if you would like to support me and this channel. If you have grabbed a paperback, you can also get a free book plate, which is a sticker with my signature, and all the details are down below in the description box for you there as well. All right, you guys, I will talk to you soon. See you next time on our readings of Demons Forever. Bye.